Hi Chef Dave and fellow classmates. Tonight I am doing my presentation on braising, and I will be doing a cooking video. I will be making a chicken with a creamy mushroom sauce, and I will also be sharing some fun facts that I found out about braising. And then by the end of the video I will be sharing this chicken recipe with you guys here in class. So this recipe that I have is for chicken in a creamy mushroom sauce. I got this recipe off of Pinterest, and it calls for a half a tablespoon of olive oil, which I use canola oil because that's what I have on hand, and a half a tablespoon of butter, which I already put in my cast iron pot here. And so I'm going to get that all melted. The rest of this recipe, it does call for 8 chicken thighs, which I already have salted and peppered, and it calls for 6 slices of bacon, which I have already roughly chopped, and it calls for a red onion sliced up, and it calls for a pound of mushrooms, and it calls for 4 cloves of garlic, and it calls for a teaspoon of dried thyme. It also, I'm going to be heating up a half a cup of heavy whipping cream, and I also have a 1/4 cup of white wine and 1 cup of chicken broth. I have my oven preheating at 375 degrees, and once this butter gets melted down, I'm going to be adding my chicken thighs, skin down, for about 5 minutes or until the skin is nice and crispy and golden. Alright, so now I am going to get rid of most of that grease there, except for maybe a tablespoon of it, and then I'll be adding my bacon. Alright, now I'm going to be adding my 6 slices of bacon. I'm going to go ahead and add my onion. And my 4 cloves of garlic. I'm going to stir this around and cook it until these onions are translucent. Then I'll be adding the wine to deglaze the pan. Okay, so now I'm going to add the wine. We're going to scrape the bottom of the pan, get all these little bits off the pan. We're going to cook this until the wine evaporates. And then we'll be adding the mushrooms. Okay, so now I'm going to add the mushrooms and the dried thyme. The recipe says you want to cook this until the mushrooms release their juices. And then we'll be adding the chicken back into it. And then we will add the stock, the chicken stock. Okay, the mushrooms have now started releasing their juices, and so I'm going to add the chicken in here. It says to nestle the chicken into, you know, all around and underneath these mushrooms. Okay, and now I'm going to add the 1 cup of chicken broth. And I'm going to increase the heat to get it up to a boil. And then we are going to put it in the oven for, the recipe says put it in the oven for 30 minutes or until your meat is at 165 degrees. I'm seeing it boil. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off and put it in the oven.
While our dish is in the oven, I'm going to tell you about the history and science of braising. Long before cooks had ovens, there was braising. They would put a heavy covered pot over a fire in the kitchen and slowly braise their food. Sometimes they would even put embers from the fire on the lid to provide an upper and lower heat source. Inside the pot, some liquid would form a sauce as the meat and vegetables cooked. This method of cooking makes for some really delicious meals. Over the years, braised recipes have gotten more complex, but our ancestors led the way with their successes with browning, moist heat, and lengthy cooking in a closed pot. A traditional braising pot has a tight-fitting lid and holds heat in very well. It should be about the same size as the dish you are preparing so that there isn't a whole lot of space between the ingredients and the lid. This will help with preventing steam to condense and drip from the underside of the lid into the dish and diluting your rich sauce. Braising is a combination of dry and moist heat cooking methods. You are usually going to braise the larger and tougher cuts of meat. This would include the cuts that come from the area of the animals that are being exercised, which allows the muscle tissues to develop more flavor. Braising and stewing are very similar. However, stewing is usually done with small cuts of meat. When you braise, you will start off with browning your meat in a little bit of oil. The temperature needs to be high enough so that it triggers the browning process. As we have learned in this class, searing your meat does not seal in the meat's juices. However, there is a browning reaction known as the Maillard reaction, and this produces new flavor compounds as the sugars and proteins in the meat react under high temperatures and the surface color deepens. You can also brown your vegetables, which will create a caramelization, and this will also add to the rich flavors of your dish. You should always use some liquid, such as wine, broth, beer, or stock. It is essential for braising because the tougher cuts of meat have greater amounts of collagen than the tender ones. Collagen is a connective tissue that helps hold the muscle fibers in the meat together. When it is cooked in moisture, the collagen dissolves into a gelatin, which will allow the meat fibers to separate more easily. The higher the cooking temperature, the tougher the muscle fibers become, and they will shrink in length and width. They will also become quite chewy. This is why we should braise at simmering temperatures. This will allow your meat to become nice and tender.
Okay, I just got it out of the oven. It looks really good. I'm going to remove the chicken from the pot here so I can make my sauce. So I've added the cream, and now I'm going to make a cornstarch slurry so I can get it to thicken up. Now it's perfect. So now I'm going to put the chicken thighs back in. Okay, and there you have it. We have chicken with a creamy mushroom sauce. And I can vouch that it tastes really good, and I am looking forward to sharing this with you.